Forget enlightenment. Forget patience. This isn't the universe balancing its books over eons. This is cosmic justice as a rapid response unit. We've collected 50 dispatches from the front lines of human folly, where the consequences weren't just deserved, they were delivered with theatrical, brutal, and deeply satisfying precision. This is karma, served piping hot. 1. The Despot of the Cul-de-Sac. There is a specific, tiny thrill that powers the Homeowners Association president. It's the buzz of absolute power over beige paint swatches and lawn height. One such president ruled his neighborhood with an iron fist, fining residents for holiday decorations left up a day too late. His reign was a masterpiece of petty tyranny. That is, until one resident, likely armed with a $20 fine for an unapproved mailbox, did the one thing tyrants fear. They read the fine print. A quick check of public records revealed the HOA's charter had expired 3 years prior. The organization was legally dissolved. In an instant, the president's power vanished. All his rules, his fines, his authority, gone. He was, overnight, just another powerless, annoying neighbor. 2. The Battle of the Bylaws. Suburban warfare is a quiet, brutal affair fought with zoning laws and anonymous complaints. A smug homeowner, incandescent with rage over the existence of children's laughter, repeatedly reported his neighbor to the city for a small, unpermitted treehouse. He was a man on a mission, a true soldier for aesthetic conformity. The annoyed neighbor, facing a bureaucratic headache, decided to return fire, not with spite, but with research. He pulled the public records for the smug homeowner's property and discovered something glorious. The massive, expensive, multi-level deck where the homeowner likely hosted his smug barbecues was built entirely without permits. The city, now obligated to act, forced the deck to be torn down. A perfect, devastatingly expensive exchange. 3. The case of the canine counter-surveillance. A petty neighbor, the kind who measures their self-worth by the silence of others, constantly filed baseless complaints against a family for their dog's occasional barking. The family, knowing their dog was quiet, grew tired of the harassment and installed a high-end security camera to prove their innocence. The camera, however, didn't just capture video, it captured a villain. The footage clearly showed the petty neighbor, under the cover of darkness, sneaking onto their property and intentionally throwing his own trash into their yard. He was literally manufacturing evidence for new complaints. Armed with this footage, the family turned the tables. The neighbor was fined for illegal dumping and harassment, silenced by the very surveillance he made necessary. 4. The Gnome Wars. The president of one homeowners association, a true stickler for the mundane, fined a family for having a garden gnome that was 2 inches too tall. This was not a warning. This was not a polite request. This was a formal citation for a violation of ceramic whimsy. In response, the family didn't just remove the gnome. They scoured the HOA rulebook, a document presumably written in the blood of defeated for sale signs. Deep within the text, they found a forgotten bylaw, a beautiful, dusty relic that made the president's own illegally built patio a finable offense. For every single day it had existed, the president was suddenly facing a bill for thousands, a debt incurred by his own obsession with 2 inches. 5. The Paramedics Post-It. We've all seen them, notes left on windshields that radiate pure distilled entitlement. A man, furious that his driveway was blocked, left an angry, self-righteous note on an ambulance. "You are blocking my drive," it fumed, presumably written as paramedics were, saving a life inside. A paramedic, likely exhausted by this staggering lack of empathy, posted a picture of the note online. The internet, as it is wont to do, erupted. The public backlash was so immense and so swift that the man was identified by his own community. The final act? His employer, seeing the story, promptly fired him, citing a fundamental incompatibility with being a decent human being. 6. The VIP parking spot. An arrogant driver, doubtless in a hurry for a very important meeting, zipped into a designated disabled parking spot. He forced a man in a wheelchair to park significantly farther away and navigate a difficult path to the building. The driver then confidently strode into that same building for a final, high-stakes job interview. He was ushered into the boardroom, and at the head of the table sat the man from the parking lot. the one he had just forced to struggle. The man, a senior board member, began the interview. "Your judgment in the parking lot," he said calmly, "has already told me everything I need to know." The interview was over. 7. The in-flight interview. An arrogant passenger on a flight was pointedly ignoring the flight attendants. Despite repeated, polite requests to turn off his phone for takeoff, he continued to text, basking in his own self-importance. The man sitting next to him finally leaned over and said, "You might want to do that." The passenger, annoyed, snapped back, "And who are you?" The man calmly replied, "I'm the CEO of the company you're flying to interview with tomorrow morning." It was, we can assume, a very quiet, very long flight, followed by a very, very short job search. There is bad first impression, and then there's getting blacklisted from 30,000 feet. 8. The Puddle-Jumpers Reckoning. There's a special kind of malice reserved for the driver who intentionally swerves to hit a puddle, drenching pedestrians on the sidewalk. A driver in a massive SUV was caught on camera doing just that, sending a tidal wave of gutter water onto a group of people. It was a perfect, petty act of vehicular assault. He just didn't look closely at the people he soaked. One of them, wiping dirty water from his face, was an off-duty police detective. The detective promptly got in his own car, pulled the driver over, and issued him a handful of expensive tickets for reckless driving. The world, it turned out, was not his personal splash park. 9. The Procession of Impatience. An incredibly impatient driver, late for a job interview, found himself stuck behind a slow-moving funeral procession. Seeing it as a personal affront to his schedule, he disrespectfully and illegally cut his way through the line of grieving motorists. He angered several people, but one in particular, the person in the lead car. The driver finally arrived, flustered but triumphant, at his make-or-break final interview. He was rushing, of course, to meet the CEO of the company, the same CEO he had just illegally overtaken in his father's funeral procession. He was not hired. 10. The Architecture of Spite. A man, consumed by a feud with his neighbor, decided to build a massive, ugly spite fence, its sole purpose to completely block the neighbor's scenic mountain view, replacing it with a towering monument of plywood and pettiness. It was a grand gesture of architectural malice. He did, however, fail to complete one crucial step, checking the city regulations. He built his monolith of spite without a permit, and the city code clearly stated any fence over 6 feet required one. He was forced by the city to tear down his expensive testament to being a terrible person at his own cost. The neighbor's view was restored. 11. The Nigerian Prince Paradox. The Nigerian Prince email is the OG of digital scams, a classic of the genre. An online scammer who had made his living sending thousands of these emails was by all accounts quite good at his job. He had duped many. One day he received an email. It was a classic Nigerian prince scam, promising millions. In a twist of cosmic buffoonery, he fell for it. He fell for his own con, hook, line, and sinker. He dutifully transferred his ill-gotten money to a rival scammer, hoping for a bigger payout. In the world of con artists, there is, it seems, always a bigger and slightly more competent fish. 12. The one-star review. A customer, embodying the spirit of the grifter, tried to extort a restaurant. He left a scathing, fake one-star review, claiming he found a cockroach in his food. He was likely hoping for a lifetime supply of free calamari or a quiet cash settlement. The owner, however, was not playing. He responded publicly to the review, not with an apology but with a link. The link was to the restaurant's high-definition security footage from that night. The video clearly showed the man reaching into his own pocket, pulling out a pre-acquired bug, and carefully placing it on his plate before summoning the waiter in disgust. The extortion attempt was deleted. The review lives on in infamy. 13. The banana peel defense. A woman, perhaps inspired by a 1920s cartoon, faked a slip-and-fall accident in a supermarket. She was dramatic. She was injured, allegedly. She was suing for a huge payout. It was a classic, if slightly uncreative attempt at insurance fraud. The store's defense team didn't even need to argue. They simply presented the crystal-clear security footage in court. The footage showed the woman, in glorious high definition, looking around, retrieving a banana peel from her purse, carefully placing it on the floor, and then executing her accidental fall. Her lawsuit was dismissed, presumably to the sound of a slide whistle. 14. The Live-Action Raffle. A man had been collecting government disability benefits for years, claiming to be paralyzed from the waist down. It was a lucrative, if morally bankrupt, scam. He was, by all accounts, committed to the bit, using a wheelchair in public at all times. His scam ended abruptly, not by an investigator, but by sheer, spectacular greed. He won a brand new pickup truck in a local raffle. The moment his name was called on live television, he forgot his paralysis, leapt triumphantly from his wheelchair, and bounded onto the stage to accept his prize. The footage of this medical miracle was, of course, all the authorities needed. 15. The GoFundMe Ghost. A man started a viral GoFundMe campaign that tugged at the heartstrings. He claimed his family's house had burned down and they had lost everything. The donations poured in, topping $50,000. It was a beautiful story of a community coming together. It was also a complete lie. A local news station, hoping to do a heartwarming follow-up story on the family's resilience, drove to their address. They discovered the house was perfectly fine. The man had faked the entire tragedy. His sob story quickly turned into a fraud conviction, and the community's goodwill was refunded. 16. The Influencer's Studio Set. A social media guru sold thousands of dollars in expensive courses, teaching his followers how to achieve his lavish lifestyle. His brand was built on aspirational content, videos of him on private jets, photos in his sprawling mansion, speeches about his relentless hustle. His empire of lies collapsed when his followers started doing some basic investigative work. They discovered his private jet was actually a grounded studio, an Airbnb for influencers that he rented by the hour. His mansion was just another Airbnb he booked for a few hours of filming. His entire persona was a meticulously faked, rented-out illusion. 17. The Catfish and the Brother. A man, using heavily photoshopped pictures of a male model, catfished women online for months. He was witty, he was charming, and he was, visually, a 10-10. He finally arranged to meet one of his dates in person, presumably hoping his personality would cover the discrepancy. When he arrived at the restaurant, he saw his date. She was sitting with the actual model from the photos. The model, it turned to be, was her very protective and very large older brother. The date was a trap. The resulting conversation was, we assume, deeply uncomfortable for the catfish. 18. The Extradition-Free Island. The leader of a massive pyramid scheme, having successfully robbed thousands of their life savings, fled the country. He chose his destination well, a tropical island paradise with no extradition treaty with the United States. He was home free, ready to live out his days as a wealthy, untouchable villain. Once there, he decided to invest his stolen millions in real estate. A local con artist, spotting a whale, sold him a non-existent, off-market beachfront mansion. The pyramid scheme leader, the master of the con, was scammed out of every last penny. He was left broke and stranded on the very island he chose as his fortress. 19. The Psychic and the Taxman. A con artist, posing as a psychic, targeted a wealthy client. He put on his best show, telling her he saw a dark legal cloud and a man in a uniform in her future. He demanded a huge fee to cleanse her aura and ward off this impending doom. The client listened patiently. She then revealed that she was an undercover IRS agent. The dark legal cloud was a federal investigation into his finances, and the man in uniform he so astutely saw was the officer waiting outside to arrest him for massive multi-year tax fraud. He was, in a way, correct. 20. The Ghost in the Machine. A fake psychic made a fortune telling grieving parents he could communicate with their deceased children. For an exorbitant fee, he would stage seances, producing spirit voices from the great beyond. It was a ghoulish, predatory enterprise. His career ended when a skeptical father, who also happened to be a professional sound engineer, attended a session. The father, heartbroken but suspicious, recorded the audio. Later, in his studio, he ran an analysis. He proved unequivocally that the spirit voices were just pre-recorded tracks being played on a hidden, low-fidelity device. He exposed the fraud, dismantling the psychic's entire operation. 21. The Marathon's Missing Miles. A woman proudly accepted her medal for third place in a major marathon. She posed for photos. She celebrated her achievement. She was the picture of exhausted triumph. Her glory, however, was short-lived. Race officials, reviewing the results, noticed a statistical anomaly. Her time splits were erratic. In fact, they discovered she had somehow run a single, specific mile in under 2 minutes. She had, for a moment, moved faster than a cheetah. It was quickly revealed she had cheated, taking a car for a significant portion of the race. She was disqualified, her moment of glory turning into a public humiliation. 22. The Pharma Bro's Bad Beat. Martin Shkreli, the universally despised Pharma Bro, was a man who cultivated a reputation for being a cartoon villain. After gaining infamy for price-gouging life-saving medication, he made another, stranger headline. He paid $2 million for a one-of-a-kind, unreleased Wu-Tang Clan album. He bragged about it, the ultimate trollish trophy. The universe, however, enjoys a good punchline. It was later revealed, with high confidence, that Shkreli was scammed. The album he bought was almost certainly a worthless fake, a bootleg passed off by a different con artist. The world collectively enjoyed a moment of pure, unapologetic Schadenfreude. 23. The Be Kind Queen. A famous TV host built a billion-dollar brand and a global empire on a single, simple motto: be kind. Her daytime show was a fortress of positivity, feel-good stories, and generous giveaways. Then, the stories started to leak. Dozens of former and current employees came forward with detailed, verified accounts of her creating one of the most toxic, abusive, and cruel workplaces in the television industry. The kindness, it seemed, was purely for the cameras. Her show was canceled. Her reputation was permanently destroyed. The dissonance between her public brand and her private behavior was too vast to survive the exposure. 24. The Hypocrisy of the Clique. An aggressively family values politician, known for his thunderous speeches criticizing the morality of others, was a rising star. He was the self-appointed guardian of the public's virtue. One evening, he accidentally tweeted a private, scandalous, and rather revealing photo of himself. It was, of course, meant for his mistress. His entire career, built on a foundation of judging others, imploded in a single click. The internet, as it does, saved the receipts. Hypocrisy. Meet the send button. 25. The Unprotected Ranch. A politician consistently and vocally voted against funding for wildfire prevention. He called it wasteful government spending, a classic case of bureaucratic bloat. He was, after all, a fiscal conservative. A year later, a massive wildfire, the kind that prevention efforts are designed to mitigate, swept through his district. The fire, which was now raging unchecked due to the lack of resources he had championed, found its way to his own multi-million-dollar luxury ranch. His entire property was burned completely to the ground. He lost everything, a direct victim of his own policies. 26. The judge becomes the judged. A notoriously corrupt judge was famous in legal circles for his system. He took bribes, almost openly, in exchange for lighter sentences. He was untouchable. He was finally caught when he accepted one such bribe from a defendant who, it turned out, was an undercover FBI agent. The sting was perfect. But the real poetry came at his sentencing. He was brought before a famously harsh, by-the-book judge, a colleague he had openly mocked for years for being a Boy Scout. That judge, relishing the moment, threw the book at him, sentencing the corrupt official to the maximum possible prison time. 27. The Burning Hoverboard. The CEO of a hoverboard company, notorious for cutting corners on safety to maximize profit, was facing public scrutiny. His devices had a nasty habit of, well, bursting into flames. He decided to do some damage control by appearing on live television to show off his product. Mid-interview, he confidently stepped onto his flagship model to demonstrate its safety and ease of use. The device malfunctioned, sputtered, and, as if on cue, burst into flames. It sent him sprawling across the stage, a smoking wreck at his feet. The world witnessed his companion's shoddy quality in the most personal and humiliating way possible. 28. The diet's devastating success. A health guru became a multi-millionaire by selling a book promoting a dangerous, medically unproven, and extreme diet. He was charismatic, he was convincing, and he relentlessly shamed any medical professionals or journalists who questioned his methods. He was selling a revolution, and it was flying off the shelves. His career abruptly ended when he suffered a massive, debilitating heart attack. His own doctors, in a statement that can only be described as medically ironic, directly attributed his condition to the exact extreme diet he had been peddling to millions. 29. The golf course of the people. A corrupt mayor funneled millions in city funds, money specifically earmarked for critical infrastructure repair, into building a lavish private golf course for himself and his cronies. It was a bold, brazen act of theft from the public. His legacy was cemented, just not in the way he intended. While he was practicing his putting, the city's main neglected water pipe finally burst. The resulting sinkhole, a massive chasm of crumbling earth, swallowed the entire 18th green. The infrastructure he ignored had returned, with a vengeance, to reclaim his prized project. 30. The pre-existing condition. In a shocking display of corporate greed, a health insurance CEO successfully lobbied Congress to deny coverage for a new, life-saving experimental treatment. His argument was simple. It was too expensive, and it would set a bad precedent. He won. Less than a year later, he was diagnosed with the exact, extremely rare disease that only this specific treatment could cure. He was, of course, denied coverage by his own policy. His name became a byword for the brutal, impersonal logic of the very system he had fought to protect. 31. The Tobacco King's Last Breath. A top executive for a major tobacco company spent decades as the public face of denial. He argued publicly, and under oath, that cigarettes were not addictive and did not cause cancer. He was charming, he was effective, and he was lying. He retired with a fortune, a golden parachute built on a mountain of deceit. Years later, he was diagnosed with a particularly aggressive and rare form of lung cancer. He died a slow, agonizing death, a victim of the very product he had assured the world was safe. 32. The Boss and the Startup. A notoriously awful boss, the kind who rules through fear and ego, fired his most talented graphic designer. The firing wasn't for cause. It was a simple, petty exercise of power. That designer, now free, did what talented people do. She started her own firm. Her first act of business? She immediately poached all of the old company's top clients, who were loyal to her talent, not to the boss. She didn't just succeed, she thrived, driving her former boss completely out of business within 2 years. It wasn't revenge. It was just superior market performance. 33. The Stolen Pitch. A manager was infamous for a particularly insidious form of theft. He stole his employees' best ideas and presented them to executives as his own. He was a master of the corporate echo, taking credit for the work of his subordinates. During a huge all-hands presentation for a new project, he was in the middle of his grand, stolen pitch. The CEO cut him off. "That's brilliant," the CEO said. "Your assistant pitched me the exact same idea yesterday." Right when she was handing in her resignation, the manager was left standing in a silent room, exposed as both a thief and a fool. 34. The Remote-Controlled Getaway. Stealing a high-end BMW seemed like a great idea to one Seattle car thief. The door was open. The keys were, well, not needed. He hopped in, only to have the doors lock behind him. Click. This wasn't a malfunction. The car's owner, who had reported it stolen moments before, was now remotely toying with him. The owner, a tech worker, started taunting the thief over the car's speaker system, turning the heat on full blast while the police casually made their way over. The thief was trapped in a self-heating metal box, getting a front-row seat to his own capture. 35. The Ricochet Effect. A vandal, filled with the kind of pointless rage that requires property damage, decided to smash a car window with a brick. He likely expected a dramatic, satisfying crash of glass. He reared back and threw the brick with all his might. He didn't account for one thing: reinforced, shatterproof glass. The brick, failing to break the window, bounced back with near-perfect Newtonian force and struck him directly in the head. He was knocked out cold, left gift-wrapped for the authorities next to the undamaged car. Sometimes the problem simply solves itself. 36. The Wrong Van. Road rage makes people do stupid things, but one California driver took it to a professional level. He aggressively cut off an unmarked van, weaving and brake-checking it, before finally slamming his brakes to a stop in the middle of the road to start a fight. His tough guy act evaporated in a split second. The unmarked van he had targeted was, in fact, an FBI surveillance vehicle. A dozen federal agents in full tactical gear swarmed out, guns drawn. He had, in the parlance of the trade, picked the wrong van. 37. The Cloud-Based Mugshot. A thief snatched a smartphone and made a clean getaway. He was so proud of his new prize that he decided to brag, immediately taking a selfie with the phone. He was, apparently, not a tech-savvy criminal. He was unaware the phone was set to automatically upload every new photo directly to the owner's cloud storage. Before the victim had even finished filing a police report, the authorities had a crystal-clear, high-definition mugshot of the suspect, grinning stupidly with his stolen property. 38. The bar full of professionals. Choosing your target is crucial in any criminal enterprise. An armed robber in France learned this lesson the hard way when he burst into a bar, weapon drawn, demanding cash. He had failed to case the joint. The bar's patrons, who looked up from their drinks with mild annoyance, just happened to be 7 off-duty members of an elite special forces unit, all experts in close-quarters combat. The robbery did not last long. It was, according to reports, over very quickly. 39. The coin collectors. A group of burglars, proving that specialization is dead, stole a large collection of rare coins from an elderly man's home. To celebrate their successful heist, they immediately went to a local bar to spend their loot. They used some of the stolen coins to pay for their drinks. The bartender, a coin enthusiast himself, immediately recognized the extremely rare, high-value coins from a recent police report about the theft. He discreetly called the authorities, who arrived to arrest the burglars while they were still at the bar, presumably arguing over who found the cool money. 40. The Skylight Lawsuit. A burglar broke into a home, and in a moment of pure slapstick, immediately fell through a skylight. He was injured, and he was caught. But his audacity was just getting started. From his hospital bed, he had the sheer, unmitigated gall to sue the homeowners for his injuries, claiming an unsafe environment. The judge, in a rare moment of what must have been judicial bewilderment, dismissed the lawsuit so fast it probably created a sonic boom. It was the end of one of the dumbest legal challenges in recorded history. 41. The Self-Arsonist. A man, watching his business fail, decided on a classic criminal exit strategy. Burn it all down and collect the hefty insurance payout. He set the fire, a beautiful, cleansing, fraudulent blaze. To his absolute horror, he discovered a fatal flaw in his plan. He had forgotten to renew his insurance policy. It had expired, by pure, magnificent coincidence, the day before the fire. He was left with no business, no insurance money, and a very, very serious arson charge. 42. The Pizza-Based Apprehension. A group of hackers, after successfully stealing and releasing sensitive data from a major corporation, were feeling themselves. They publicly taunted the company's cybersecurity team, mocking their incompetence on social media. Their victory lap was cut short. They were tracked down and arrested after one of them, in a moment of profound stupidity, used the stolen company credit card to order a pizza. To his own house. 43. The Circle of Life. A notorious poacher, known for illegally hunting endangered rhinos in South Africa, was a ghost in the wilderness. He had evaded capture for years. He met a truly organic end while tracking his latest victim. According to reports from his accomplices, he was surprised and subsequently trampled to death by an elephant. Before his cohorts could retrieve the body, a local pride of lions found him. He was, in the end, eaten. The food chain, it seems, has a strict no-refunds policy. 44. The Taxman Cometh. The infamous gangster Al Capone was a public enemy, a murderer, and a bootlegger responsible for countless brutal crimes. But law enforcement, despite knowing this, could never make the charges stick. He was too insulated, too powerful. His reign of terror finally ended, not with a bang, but with a ledger. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, successfully prosecuted and imprisoned him for the one crime he thought was minor enough to ignore: tax evasion. 45. The Brazen Bull. History is filled with terrible inventions, but the Brazen Bull holds a special place. Its creator, Perilos of Athens, proudly presented the torture device, a hollow bronze bull under which a fire would be lit, roasting the victim inside, to Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas. The tyrant, a true connoisseur of cruelty, admired the craftsmanship. He then ordered Perilos to be the very first person to test it. Perilos was dragged, screaming, and shoved into his own invention. He was, quite literally, cooked by his own bad idea. 46. The inventor of the revolution. As the architect of France's reign of terror, Maximilien Robespierre was the engine of the revolution. He sent tens of thousands of enemies of the state to the guillotine, a machine he championed as the great equalizer. In a stunning and perhaps inevitable twist of fate, his political enemies turned on him. His allies vanished. He was declared an outlaw. He met his end on the Place de la Révolution, at the blade of the very same machine he had fed for years. He became the final, high-profile victim of his own brutal, automated system. 47. The Dictators Dilemma. Joseph Stalin, the paranoid and brutal Soviet dictator, had a problem. He trusted no one. During his Great Purge, he executed or imprisoned nearly all of the country's most competent and experienced doctors, fearing a conspiracy. Years later, he suffered a massive stroke. The only physicians left to treat him were a handful of terrified, inexperienced sycophants. They were too scared to administer the proper treatment, too frightened of making a mistake. He died a slow, agonizing death, surrounded by incompetence, a victim of his own paranoid purges. 48. The Rainbow Connection. The infamous Westboro Baptist Church, known for their hateful protests and God hates fags signs, got a lesson in poetic real estate. They were a blight on their Topeka, Kansas neighborhood. An LGBTQ+ rights group, seeing an opportunity, bought the house directly across the street from the church's compound. They didn't just move in. They painted the entire house the bright, vibrant colors of the rainbow pride flag. The view from the church, from their windows, their front porch, every time they left for a protest, was now a constant, fabulous, silent reminder of everything they hated. 49. The return policy. A company was notorious for dumping massive amounts of industrial waste into a local river, devastating the ecosystem. They ignored fines, they dodged regulations, and they saved millions in disposal fees. Years later, during a major flood, that very same contaminated river overflowed its banks. The water, now a toxic sludge of their own making, surged back. It completely destroyed the company's main headquarters, which was, of course, located conveniently near the river. Nature, it seems, has a return policy. 50. The toxic hunting ground. A chemical company, looking to cut costs, illegally dumped thousands of barrels of toxic waste in a remote forest for years. They buried the evidence and moved on. The CEO of that same company, an avid hunter, later bought a massive, pristine plot of that exact same land for his private hunting reserve. Years passed. Those barrels, long forgotten, began to leak. The toxins seeped into the soil and the water, poisoning the wildlife and rendering his prized, personal paradise a toxic, barren wasteland. He had, in effect, poisoned his own paradise. The final word, cosmic Schadenfreude. So, what have we learned? If this journey through the archives of human failure has taught us anything, it's that the universe is not a benevolent, ethereal force. It is not a gentle guide. It is a bored, celestial screenwriter with an exquisite, almost vulgar sense of irony. It's a filmmaker that understands that the best endings aren't always happy, but they must be satisfying. We look for grand, sweeping narratives of justice, for the slow turning of history's wheel. We expect karma to be a monastery, a quiet, patient process of reflection and rebirth. But these 50 stories suggest something else entirely. They suggest karma is a casino. It's a trapdoor. It's a precisely timed banana peel. It's the poacher becoming the prey. It's the corrupt judge facing a harsher judge. It's the con artist falling for the con. It is not justice blind, but justice with a 20/20, high-definition camera, waiting for the perfect moment of public humiliation. In these tales, the sin is almost always the same: hubris, the arrogant belief that the rules of decency, of law, of physics, of basic common sense apply to everyone else. The Pharma bro who believes he's the smartest man in the room, the politician who believes his own speeches, the bully who believes the world is his personal parking spot. They all share a fatal inability to see the punchline coming. These aren't just stories of failure. They are masterpieces of structure. The setup is the sin itself. The payoff is a mirror. The arsonist who forgot to renew his insurance. The anti-wildfire politician whose ranch is the first to burn. The tyrant cooked in his own bull. These aren't accidents. This is storytelling. It's the universe looking at a human being's grand, villainous plan, finding the one, singular, fatal flaw, and building the entire third act around it. It's the cosmic chef's kiss of retribution. Perhaps, then, the lesson is not to be good in the hopes of a heavenly reward. The lesson is to simply be less stupid. The universe, it seems, has very little patience for bad writing. And in the grand, chaotic documentary of our existence, it will always, always find a way to get the perfect shot.